Alright, here we are at another DIY, and for this video, I will try to explain everything as best as I can. I will admit some of this is filmed oddly because I wasn't originally planning on making a video out of this, so let's see what we can do. Alright, so to start, you'll want to find an appropriate glass bottle. And most craft stores have these, Walmart might have them too. I got mine at Michael's, I think. I'm pretty sure I got it at Michael's. So anyways, after you get your bottle, if it comes with a cork, you'll want to take that out. And next you'll want to assemble all your supplies. I will have all of those up on the screen, and I will also list them in the description below. And if you don't feel like scrolling down or anything to the description, you can just pause it. So let's move on. Alright, to start, I poured my blue glitter glue into the glass jar. And I added some extra glitter, and for mine I used slightly coarser glitter, but it really depends on what look you're going for, so use whatever glitter you think is going to look best for you. And after this, I poured some of my glowing glue into the bottle and I stirred it all up. And this is just a side note, you could just get 2 bottles of the non-glowing glitter glue and use that instead. I only used the glow-in-the-dark too because I thought it would be fun to have it still glowing after the LED lights were turned off. And ooh, plus the LED charges the glow up too. Originally I was going to try to do it without an LED light, and that's where I was kind of going with the glowing thing, but then I decided the LED is probably going to look the best. But it's up to you. So anyways, feel free to skip the glow. It's not really necessary. So anyways, make all the changes you want. This is just how I made mine, and I hope it can give some people ideas. And a side note on the glow, the lid doesn't glow wonderfully with the LED lights. You could probably make it so that happens in yours. But yeah, I have a little bit of glow paint on that, but I'll get to that later. Okay, next, I added Decorative Rocks. Whether you do this or not is totally up to you. I mostly did it to make it look like salt, and I'm using this as an Eve bottle and salts for my Elizabeth cosplay, so I put a label on both sides, but one says Eve and one says salts. And it also makes the rocks also mix the texture up a little. So I'm planning on making one with only glue at some point, but I do like how this one turned out too. Oh, make sure you are... I can't talk. Okay, make sure you are keeping in mind you will need to add something into the bottle later if you do an LED. So make sure you don't fill the entire thing up with the glue, or it might make a mess later when you put it in. So after this, I worked on the bottle topper, or lid, whatever you want to call it. And I originally bought some of those glass things you stick candles in at Party City. I can't remember what they're called for some reason. So those are an option if you don't want to use resin, which is what I used. So what I did was I found this old blob of cured resin I had sitting around from when I poured too much resin working on another project. So I made a pattern in the shape of the lid in the game, and I traced it onto the resin blob. Sorry, the resin blob. Okay. So I don't know if I got any pictures of this or not, or this. Oh my gosh, I can't talk tonight. Okay, let me take a step back here. I made a pattern in the shape of the lid in the game and traced it on my resin blob. Then I cut it down into shape. And how I did this was I got my Dremel out and I Dremeled the crud out of it. So I don't know if I got any pictures of this or not, but I also Dremeled 2 holes into the bottom of it so I could attach a couple spare pieces of resin using E6000 in them. This is what I would do to hold my bottle lid into the chamber I made for the lights, and I'll get into this more shortly. And oh, also I did end up, like I'm looking back on everything, I did end up changing it and I didn't use the 2 holes. I eventually cut it into a slit that connected the 2 holes because I ended up changing my design. I'll add a picture of that in for what I changed it to, so it's actually simpler and I think it holds better, but you can get the other way to work as well. I'll try to have pictures that explain that better or show what I'm talking about. So anyways, the next part's pretty straightforward. You just spray paint the blue lid, add glitter while the paint is wet, and then also add some glow spray paint to the lid as well if you want. And once you're happy with the lid, put a sealing clear coat over it, then paint your little red and black symbols onto the lid and seal it again. The next step is the logo. I wanted to draw this myself, but you could find an image from the game and use it, or you could trace it or freehand it. I opted to draw and paint mine with acrylics. So one side of my bottle says salts and one Eve, as I said before. So after this, I cut around my painting and glued it onto the bottle. And after that, I sealed it using Mod Podge and just painted Mod Podge over my painting once it was totally dry. So that sealed that. Alrighty, bear with me. This is gonna be interesting to explain. This is gonna be the hard part to explain, so just please bear with me. So let me start by saying that I was making this up as I went along. So I had a lot of different plans on how I could do this part, including trying to wire everything up and store the battery in the lid. Then I decided to just stick some LED lights I got from Party City in a pack. I think it was a 10-pack. They're just little LEDs. I'll probably still work on one that has a button that's a little more convenient in the future, but for now this is what I did, and it works really well, so yeah. But a big reason I wanted to make sure the lid was removable was to be able to change out my LED and LED batteries and all that. So in order to accomplish this, when the glass was filled with glue, I made a plastic chamber and positioned it into the bottle. And make sure you have everything stirred how you want it, because I forgot to do this and a lot of my stuff settled to the bottom. But this could be to some degree inevitable regardless of if you do this or not. But when I was happy with how I positioned the little chamber I made, I glued it into place. After I had the chamber how I wanted it, I took my bottle cap, and I think mine was from a bottle of Fairlife milk. Not sponsored. So anyways, I painted this gold and weathered it with some brown acrylics, and I also cut a hole into the bottle top to make sure I could insert both the LED and the lid into the jar still. So I believe I used E6000 to glue this part on since the glue wasn't adhering well to the hot glue. And that's the lid that I used the E6000 on. Not the lid, but the gold part, that part that's right under the lid. However, you could get it in place and held with hot glue to make it easier to get the E6000 on, if that makes sense. I realized that I put the wrong picture in the video, as I mentioned before, with the piece at the bottom of the lid, so I'm going to show it here, what holds it into the jar rather than what I showed before. I changed it to this look that's on the screen now. So for the bottom, I believe I dremeled a slit, oh gosh, I'm really scatterbrained here. I believe I dremeled a slit rather than the two holes, or changed the two holes into a slit. So depending on how you make the piece, either way could work, as I stated before. I will say the second is probably the best, as it puts less stress on the prop and just that area in general. It's easier to insert too, so again, less stress on the prop. But again, it depends what materials you use. This is just based on how I made it. So anyways, onto the LED. For this, I put a piece of iridescent organza into the chamber to try to make it disperse the light better, but honestly, the effect is pretty mild, so that step really isn't necessary in this project, but it could work in other projects. I used two lights for this part, so it had a little more light showing throughout the top and the bottom rather than just staying in one spot, if that makes sense. If you want, you can use a Sharpie to color the light blue, but that's not really necessary either. You can just keep it clear. But anyways, the issue of the light falling and getting stuck in this chamber was present still, so to combat this, I tied both of my little LED lights, because they had a little piece I could tie it, some elastic around, some stretch elastic, and I could just pull them out if they got stuck, and it just made it easy to fix that if that became an issue. So it's pretty simple to disguise the clear elastic as well. You can tuck it in so it doesn't show. Make sure you can still get your lid in without too much of a space while the lights are inserted. I did have a bit of space still, so I took hot glue to fill this area out, and this can be seen in between the lid and the bottle cap. And while on this topic, I thought I should mention that I also did this at the bottom of the lid to help keep the insert piece in place better, and it made it look a little neater too. So I really hope this makes some sense. Feel free to ask away if anything is confusing, because I know this explanation is a bit long-winded and scatterbrained, so I really tried to make it make more sense. But with this, my DIY is concluded, so good luck if you decide to make one. Also, I would love to see anything you come up with, so feel free to send me pictures on Facebook. My Facebook page is in the description below. I'd love to see what you come up with, or if you perfect any areas that I had some screwy way of doing. But anyways, If you're interested, I have another video featuring my Elizabeth cosplay coming out soon, so feel free to stick around. So take care and good luck. I hope this works for you. Bye-bye.